Cheers, guys. Epix911, welcome to the Elitist Geek VR news for Friday, October 7th, 2016. Friday means Gaming Friday.
Yes, it does. Gaming Friday. Yeah.
Indeed. Friday again. The weeks just, holy crap, do they go fast. All right, let's start with just a bit of preamble. I'm going to start with the camera discussions from yesterday, which is still ongoing. This isn't finalized. There's still things to say about the cameras. All right, so I've done additional research. Where I was incorrect, and I put out a clarification video, is in not realizing that the Oculus Touch comes with a second camera. In terms of how the camera works for the Oculus Rift, from the execs themselves, it was one of the articles that I linked yesterday, you can do 360 degree with two cameras. In fact, I showed a video with just the HMD to track about 2 months ago. You were essentially able to do room tracking. The gentleman in that video, he crawled, he walked backwards. The whole time he was tracked, right? What they have now is they've added the Oculus Touch. Now, they've added a second camera, absolutely, but they've also increased the complexity of the tracking requirements because now you have two touch controllers to track. But still, with two cameras, you get 360 degree tracking. You just will have times where there's occlusion, and occlusion just means the camera can't see one of the tracked devices, and you will lose tracking for that. Whether it's a touch controller, one, both, or your HMD, that's a possibility with occlusion. So what they suggest is putting a third camera in behind you to ensure almost maximum room scale capability, like as good. Obviously, you can go completely overkill, but very good quality tracking that really limits the possibility of occlusion. In other words, it limits the ability for one or more tracked items to lose tracking from the camera. So that's still ongoing. I'm going to look into that some more. That's essentially where it's at now. So absolutely, two cameras will work. Three just works better. That's it. How good it needs to be for you is a subjective thing. That's up to you. I don't know. I haven't even tried two yet. Haven't tried three. I don't know. I'm just reporting what's out there. And hopefully we'll continue to get clarification. And as we're able to test this ourselves, you know, get a further idea of what those cameras are actually capable of with the touch controllers. So I've added some links for some of the sites where they reference that third camera. I'll put that in the description below. And again, there's no sides in this. Like personally, for me, I've mentioned this a lot of times, it's about the games. I have a Rift. I have a Vive. I have a Gear VR. I'm getting a Sony PlayStation VR. This channel isn't about picking one side over the other. It's about reporting VR news. And sometimes it's going to report things that you may personally not agree with. Like I know there's quite a few of you who have absolutely no time for room scale VR. You think it's a gimmick, and you have absolutely that right to believe it's a gimmick, right? But you have to recognize that there are people who do like room scale, and they do want to hear about that, right? I will try as much as I can to give you the stories you want to hear and give them the stories they want to hear by simply covering it all and not trying to exclude any one technology from the news discussions. And hopefully not make mistakes along the way like I did with the additional camera that is packed in with the Oculus Touch set. Now, next up, I talked about the three stunning titles, and I just wanted to clarify on that. I also mentioned in that video that for me, it's gameplay. I would rather play a game that has crappy graphics, but good gameplay, than a game that has good graphics and crappy gameplay, right? And I even mentioned in the video, I used roguelites as an example, roguelikes. And for those who aren't familiar with roguelikes, those are ASCII character text games. They don't even have graphics. They use character graphic symbols. So it's very basic graphics. But the gameplay is a lot of fun, and I enjoy it, right? So where I'm coming from those titles, and what I said in the video with the 3 games is, if the gameplay is as good as the graphics are, you're probably in for a treat. But until we get those games in our hands, we won't know. And that's the reality. Until they're actually released, I can't say whether they're good or they're bad, nor can you until we try them. So hopefully once those are released, we'll have a better idea of how good they actually are. Next up, Lone Echo. That was a game I talked about yesterday. I believe that was the first in the batch. A little bit more information on it today. It is a first-person virtual reality adventure game. And you play the part of Jack, and you are basically a robot inhabiting AI. Now, they don't specify in there, but it sounds like you can take over different robot bodies, which would be kind of like the Paradroid game that I mentioned. And what was the game? There was another game on virtual reality where it was kind of similar. But either way, very cool. So it's an adventure game where you inhabit robot bodies, but you are an artificial intelligence, not an actual biological being. And the other thing I liked about it is when you grab stuff, so the entire game takes place in 0G, and when you grab stuff, apparently your hand will mold to the object that you're grabbing. So if it's a sphere, you're going to have like a spherish or cylinder, motion. If it's elongated, it'll be more like a grip like that. So very cool. That's the kind of thing that right now it's going to be very general, but as we get into really specific tracking, like finger tracking, that's going to get a lot more complex than what we have now. And viewer Stay Calm 2010, a viewer on the channel, brought up a really good point about AAA publishers. And she basically asked me what I would consider is a AAA publisher, right? And, you know, one of the things she asked was, is it just about good graphics? And absolutely not. You know, take what I said about graphics and gameplay before, but let's take it a little bit further. So as far as I'm concerned, for me, what makes a AAA publisher would be size and scope of the development budget. Large budgets are not something you typically see with indie games, right? Or indie game companies. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to be a good game. It can still be a crappy game. It just has a large budget, and that's what you tend to see with AAA publishers. You also have large volume of units moved. We're talking hundreds of thousands into the millions as opposed to hundreds or low thousands. And finally, another indicator is international distribution networks. Now, a lot of that is mostly just the console side because PC has really kind of moved towards digital distribution. But on the console side, where you see, you know, a lot of physical packaging yet, AAA publishing are those that still have international distribution networks for physical media supply chain. That's another way. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is I had a video last week where I asked for opinions on PC racing wheels. And I'm happy to report that my wheel, the Wingman Formula Force GP, has been resurrected. So I was actually able to get it to work. Now, obviously, it's nowhere near as good as some of the wheels that you recommended, but at least I have it working. And I can start to enjoy games like Project Cars and Dirt Rally. In fact, I played Project Cars probably about an hour between yesterday and earlier today, and it was just so much fun with the wheel. It's amazing how much difference, you know, an actual game-specific controller can make, like a wheel for a racing game or HOTAS for a flight game. So still going to be getting a wheel at some point in the future, but for now at least, I can make do with my Wingman Force GP. All right, as far as news is concerned, article that we just talked about. So we just talked about AAA publishing. What makes up a AAA publisher, right? And this next one is an Upload VR article, and it's a perfect example to look at and ask that same question. Does this make them a AAA publisher? Now, the headline of the article reads, VR Dev First Contact, so the name of the company is First Contact, raises $5 million to create AAA games. Now, First Contact consists of Starbreeze employees, Blizzard employees, and Infinity Ward employees. So absolutely, those were all AAA publishers. But simply being an ex-employee of one, starting your own game company, what do you guys think? Does that automatically make them a AAA publisher, or do they still have to earn those accolades? And if we're looking at the benchmarks that I mentioned earlier, distribution, revenue, etc., do they have to hit those to be considered a AAA publisher? So I thought that was an interesting question. Their first game is going to be a first-person shooter that is set almost 700 years into the future. Maybe a very good game, but again, would that be considered a AAA game? So based on my definition, I'd probably say no, but again, be interested in hearing what you guys think. Now, this next one is kind of an interesting story. It's a little bit mythology, it's a little bit conspiracy theory. There was a game back in the 80s, and it was an arcade game, and it was called Polybius, or Polybius. And the rumor with this game was if you played this game, you would possibly black out, or all kinds of weird things happened. You'd get visited by men in black, and all kinds of strange things happened during the course of the game. But the kind of common denominator was you'd black out for the period that you were playing. And this was a rumor that I can't say it was worldwide, but it was certainly North America wide. We heard about it here in the Pacific Northwest, and definitely know that it was heard in the States, right? But back then, it was just a rumor. We never saw the video game. All right, enter Jeff Minter. And if you don't know who Jeff Minter is, that's fine. He's been around a long time. You may not know. But he was a developer for the Commodore 64, the Atari computers, a lot of the older computers. And he's, an eccentric guy from Wales, and makes some really trippy games, basically. Most of his games are yak-based or ungulates, right? So you've got your camels, your cows, your llamas. They all figure in his games. And Attack of the Mutant Space Camels. What's another one, bro? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, there was one that just came out for the PlayStation recently. Space Camel?
Space Camels or something.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Oh, of course, Tempest 2000.
Tempest 2000, exactly. But that one was non-animal based, right?
Right.
Exactly. So yeah, most of his games were animal based. He's probably most known for the Jaguar Tempest 2000, which was his take on the original Tempest arcade game. And I loved his version of it. Jeff Minter is really good at working with colors, especially psychedelic type colors. Very vibrant, very actiony, but he's not for everyone. He's kind of a like him or hate him type guy. There's not much middle ground with Jeff Minter. Personally, I liked a lot of his games. He took existing models like Robotron or the Star Wars game, bro, the Empire Strikes Back, right? That was his version with Space Camels. The Atari 2600 game, where you take on the AT-ATs.
Yeah, the Mutant Camels in Space or Grid Runner or one of those.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was Mutant Space Camels. So it was it was a take on Star Wars game. But he added his own twist, which again was the animals, trippy sounds, trippy graphics. And, he was never a AAA publisher, if we're going to talk about that. He was never in the top 10 even, but he definitely built up a loyal fan following that followed him as he worked on Jaguar projects, Project Neon, which was a multimedia type station.
Nuon.
Or Nuon, thank you. Nuon, yeah. And he continued to make games in the 2000s on various platforms. Anyways, a blog appeared, and he kind of touched on it on his own, but also on a Sony blog, where he talked about going to some old business to eat. He loves curries, and I think he had a curry there. And the owner took him to the back and said, look, I've got this machine. I want you to take a look. And it ended up being Polybius. Now, obviously, part of the story is him embellishing it, setting it up for his version of the game in VR, right? But it's a neat story. Read the blog. I'll include all of that. And he's got an upcoming VR version, which I'm sure is going to be as Jeff Minterish as it can be, which is going to mean a lot of bright colors, fast-moving graphics. And he's really looking at targeting 120 frames per second without reprojection. And that's very possible. He's a good coder, first of all. He writes really good optimized code, but also it's not very complex. So it's going to be a lot of simple but elegant and bright and in-your-face colors. Basically, exactly, sensory overload. So I'm looking forward to that, just to see what it's like. And knowing a Jeff Minter game, it's not going to be very expensive. It'll be affordable, but probably a hell of a lot of fun. Next up, some new Vive releases, and some of these I've spoken about before. Body VR, the guided meditation. There's also a music visualizer for Vive called Dimensional Intersection that is out, and a space shooter game on the Oculus Store called Space Stalker. I'm going to put the link below. There's at least 12 to 15 other titles that I won't get into now, but definitely a good week for a good variety of releases on both the Vive and the Rift. Next news piece, the final Oculus Touch units. So we've talked about the established release date and the cost of the Touch and the fact that it comes with a second camera. We're also hearing that the final unit that they have ready is going to see an improvement in battery life of about 40%. And that 40% is going to represent, according to them, up to 30 hours of use. So that's not bad. But they did substantiate what a lot of us guessed, and that was that it wasn't going to be a rechargeable battery. A lithium ion. It's going to be a AA battery, a single AA. Now what you can do, obviously, is get rechargeable AA's and use those in the unit. But 30 hours of life, that's not too bad. That's, considerable. You're not going to be changing them like the Atari Lynx every 4 or 5 hours, because that thing was a battery drainer. The short animation called Invasion was pretty popular. It won an award, and it was on the Rift and the Gear VR. And it was the studio is Baobab. I think I pronounced it wrong the first time too, Baobab. They're coming back with a sequel to that, which will also be free, called Asteroids. And it's going to be 3 minutes, and it will appear first on the Gear VR, and then after that, they indicated it will be coming to the Rift. But we'll start on the Gear VR. We also received word from Connect 3 that Oculus is going to support WebVR, and they're going to do that through a new VR web browser codenamed Carmel. So Carmel. Not a lot of details on what that is, just that it's going to support that. And they also announced React VR, which is a VR-focused version of the open source JavaScript library. And that was created by Facebook in 2013 for devs building user interfaces for web-based content. So nice to see that on the VR side. I've mentioned a couple in past news programs, a couple of web-type VR ones. Nothing has really taken off so far. Doesn't mean that there won't be something that will, but to date, nothing has really grabbed the masses. So it'll be interesting to see what WebVR, if anything, manages to do. And we also have an update, another one from Connect 3 from Oculus on new earbud accessories. Now, of course, the Rift, as you can see there, has the headphones built in on the side, but they're over the ear, and they're certainly not noise canceling. So what these earbud accessories that they're selling, and they're going to have pre-orders October 10th, so similar to the Touch, releasing December 6th. No word on the price that I could see, but the claim from Oculus is that they are high noise isolation, so not canceling, but high noise isolation with optimized drivers that provide a higher level of VR immersion. So interesting to see. That's a couple of months away. There you have it, guys. That's the news for tonight. As always, cheers, and definitely catch you on the VR flip side.